there's obviously some hormonal changes that happen. Weight gain happens to a lot of women. And that tends to be one of the most common concerns that we see, just working with women for so many years is they come in and it's like, oh, I hit menopause or perimenopause and these hormones and I have this belly fat. And it tends to present itself that way and some other things, which we'll get into in a second. But where we come in, or you as the person that's proactive for your health and fitness, it's really asking the question, like, how can I minimize the side effects that I'm experiencing or potentially can experience as I age, and also optimize my health and hotness as best as I can through natural means that we have control over. There is some part of that that we don't have control over, but there is a lot of it that we can control by way of some of the things I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so what we're going to go over is really like why hormones matter. I know it can get confusing. There are a ton of hormones. So we're going to talk about some key ones that generally affect women as they age in their fat loss and muscle gain endeavors. And then we're going to talk about check engine lights as something I refer to often in the podcast, which is your body's way of saying like, bitch, you need to look at some shit, right? Like some things are going on. We got some fires we got to put out. Quit ignoring the check oil, the tires are low, you got to put gas. Like there's some things that happen to us as we age, and hormones will kind of send off these signals. So we'll talk about those. We'll also talk about some diets and exercise protocols that have been shown with consistent use and abuse to actually affect your hormones negatively. So we will go over that as well. And then some strategies for hormone balance in 3 key areas. While there are many hormones, these are the 3 that we tend to see, I want to say, improve as people work through our programs, and honestly just work on their health and fitness in general. Okay. And then throughout, we will weave in some fat loss strategies, some tips, and some actionable things for you to actually, put into use. So why is this important to understand? A lot of times in our quest for hotness, right? We want flat abs, or we want, to wear, the jeans or whatever. We forget about our hormones in the process because we don't see them, right? They're not like tangible. It's not like when we look in the mirror, we're like, oh, here's my estrogen, that's too high. We don't typically know that. A lot of times we aren't educated as, we're growing into our midlife sort of, chapter as far as how much hormones are affecting things. So hormones, the easy short way to put it for everybody is essentially they are chemicals produced by various glands in our bodies. So the 3 ones that we tend to focus on in terms of the strategies we use, we don't tell people like, join us and we're going to help your adrenal, thyroid, and ovaries. We basically do the things and we focus and prioritize the things that are going to support those particular glands, organs to be optimized and working at their best possible efficiency for each individual person that we get to touch, within our programs, whether you know it or not. This is something that we build in, and those particular hormones are responsible for regulating numerous bodily functions. And the ones that are relative to this conversation are things like your metabolism, right? Like how much body fat you store, how well you are at burning fats, metabolizing, all of the supplements that you take, and really just breaking down multiple different processes through your metabolism and your mood and your energy, which are directly related to many things that when your check engine light is on, we often decide we don't want to do the things we need to do because our mood is shitty and our energy sucks. And those 2 things together do not make you feel particularly excited to do things like exercise or eat well or be in the mood for spicy time or, any of these like normal day-to-day things that, that most of us should be implementing for stress relief, hormonal balance, and lifestyle. In women, the hormones are going to play a vital role in body composition, in men too, but specifically with us women, there are a lot of things that we can do to mitigate those responses from hormones. So, would love to know in the chat box, are any of your check engine lights on? I'm going to share mine with you because this was something that I experienced. I'm speaking from experience. And I just put this little like check engine light over here, right? Like when you've got these things going on, this is your body going, okay, we got to address some issues because they need to be balanced in order for us to not experience a lot of these side effects. So for myself personally, and it kind of ranges depending on where you're at in your hormonal life cycle. But for me, my clues that something was going on with myself hormonally were that number 2, 4, 6, 9, and 13 were the biggest check engine lights for me. My mood swings were out of control. My fatigue was on a whole nother level. I could sleep 8 hours, get up, take my son to school, and come back and sleep for another 3 hours. This is no joke. This went on continuously for a while. And I'm like, something's not right. Like I'm doing all the things, I'm a trainer. I've lived the lifestyle most of the time. And on further evaluation, my thyroid was absolutely trashed. My testosterone was like way low, off the charts for women levels of testosterone. I was dealing with just a combination of those two, plus another hormone, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, called leptin, which is oftentimes affected by extreme periods of dieting. And you'll see a lot of times women who have a long history of like crash dieting or lots of diets, and or women who bodybuild consecutively for many, many, many years without sufficient breaks. Hi, that's me. That is also affected too. So let's see, in the chat, we have a variety, right? Let's see, hair thinning, moody, around your period. Yes. Let's see, irregular menstrual period. Fatigue, low libido. Let's see, Jen says fatigue, hot flashes. Ugh, the hot flashes are a bitch. Headaches, changes in appetite. And Tori says just about everything but the kitchen sink. Right. And this definitely I feel you, because again, this fluctuates sometimes for us depending on the month as well, especially if you don't have your hormones in check. And I'm super passionate about it because I see how much of an improvement it's made for myself, my quality of life, especially with the check engine lights, and also the women that work with us. And as we're working with them, going through, something like the Goddess Body Project or Ditch Deprivation, and we're working with them and they're checking in and we're seeing these kinds of things come up in their check-ins. This is a check engine light for us coaches to be alerted to say to the client, like, okay, we've been working on all of these lifestyle factors. You're nailing them all, and you're still experiencing these things. They've maybe improved, but they're not going away, which means this is a next level sort of, now we need to take it to the mechanic, right? Like you've gone and put air in your tires, you filled up the gas tank, maybe you took it, maybe, you had your husband change the oil. I don't know. You did all the things that you could on your own, but now there's something like the engine light's on, right? The engine is on. We took care of what we could, but we got to get to the deeper root of the problem. Okay. So just as a quick review, like on the left, imbalanced hormones, I was literally like, my check engine light was screaming and blaring on the left. Okay. And this was a lifestyle of highly processed foods, a lot of fast food, very, very high fat, high sugar diet, which actually ended up landing me in the hospital. Diet hopping, doing all the things. And then over on the right, this is where I kind of go into, usually every year, if I'm not competing, I will go into like a little bit of a mini cut in the summer. Like this summer, usually around my birthday, I'll plan a photo shoot or something that just kind of like motivates me, keeps me on track. And that's sort of where I am in the pool in the summertime, eating 80 to 90% whole foods, knowing how to diet cycle and understanding the impact that it makes now. And also my hormones are balanced, right? I took care of that. I went to the mechanic and made sure that, I was taking care of things like my thyroid and my testosterone, because those two, there's only so far you can go with diet and exercise, and at some point you may need support for that. Okay, next one is we're going to dive into the common mistakes that a lot of people make when it comes to dieting and exercise, and they don't realize the impact that it's going to later have on their hormones. And number one is setting the bar too high when they're trying to lose weight. We see this very, very often. This is one of my clients, Claire. We dropped 50 pounds in 52 weeks. So that's almost a year. And when she came to me, she wanted to compete. And I like to use this story often because she wanted to do it in a shorter time frame than I had suggested. And I told her, I said, look, I know that you want to get on stage, but the amount of weight that we have to lose is going to be aggressive, right? We're going to have to go into an aggressive diet, an aggressive cut, lots of cardio. And that is going to wreak havoc on your hormones. And I am not in the business of destroying anybody's metabolism for the sake of a plastic trophy. Okay. So if you want to do that, I'm not the coach for you. But if you want to do this right and make this a lifestyle after your competition, then here's my suggestion, right? So I mapped it out for her. We went into these periods of you're dieting, you're not dieting, you're dieting, you're not dieting. And when you're not dieting, it doesn't mean that you go back to your old ways. It just means that you eat in a calorie allotment that is a maintenance amount of calories. So you're not in a crazy cut or deficit or diet. You're in maintenance. So you're eating calories that support your current body weight. And oftentimes, because you're grooming your metabolism, you're eating the right foods, you will continue to recomp your body, which means you'll still be building muscle and losing body fat. And a lot of times, and in Claire's case, she continued to lose weight, and it was slower, but we were still able to increase her food and make sure that she wasn't in like really, really low calorie territory. So with that, I often say, like, if you are on a journey to lose weight and it's over 20 pounds, you want to give yourself a nice amount of time. Like if it's by a deadline and you're like, oh, I have this reunion or my birthday or whatever, it's so important that you reverse engineer that either yourself or you work with a coach to kind of figure that out. So that way you have a plan and you allot for things like hiccups and lifey things and a couple weeks of buffer in there where things might not change, things like that. So making sure your expectations are not wild and not realistic. And then asking yourself, how long did it take? And this is the question nobody really wants to ask themselves, because I never wanted to ask myself this, but like, how long did it take me to get here? Right? I didn't just like wake up one day and then all of a sudden was unhappy and was 50 pounds overweight. It was years of eating crap. It was years of not exercising or kind of vacillating between programs. So it's really an act of being patient with yourself, being kind to yourself, and not feeling like, oh, I'm a loser because I can't lose this 50 pounds in 12 weeks or 24 weeks even. It's pacing it and making sure that you realize that body fat loss for the long haul should be a half a pound to a pound per week maximum for most of the population. And I say most because where this tends to end up being more is okay, right? Well, what if I want to lose 2 or 3 pounds a week? The population that loses that amount per week, and it's typically not as impactful as it is for someone who isn't, is someone who is standard or classically obese or diagnosed with obesity, and maybe they have over 100 pounds to lose. It is normal for them to see that kind of rapid result in the beginning, but even that will plateau and it will start to level off, and they will start to fall into this half a pound to 1 pound per week. And sadly, this is oftentimes a lot of where most people will stop. They're like, it's not working anymore, I'm going to stop. And it's more like, it's not that it's not working, it's now working at its suggested and realistic pace, but because you get spoiled by that initial like 2 pounds this week, 3 pounds this week, or whatever, we think that this is going to continue, and it is not the case. Most of the time, those first few weeks when the weight comes off faster, it's because you're just getting your shit together, right? Your body's like, oh, okay, we're going from eating like a, not so well, or a shit show is my favorite word, is how I used to eat, to now I'm actually like eating as I'm supposed to as a human, and my body is now adapting to that. And so in the beginning, you will see a little more of a flush. So got to be patient. And I always say, don't try to weigh what you did in high school, right? I think we chase that oftentimes, like, oh, I need to weigh what I did when I got married, or when I was in college, or when I was high school. And it's like not realistic, not who you are anymore. And it sets you up for being very disappointed. So okay, moving on. Common mistake number 2. So who feels here in the chat, if you're still with me, who feels like they immediately tend to resort to low calories when they diet? And by low, by our definition of low here at the Venus world, is if you are on less than 1,300 calories per day. Anybody feel like that's kind of like they go there or lower when they start on their own instinct? And if you don't, great. If you do, no shame, because it's totally normal. Audrey says, no, ma'am. Okay. Well, that's great. And if you do, it's great that you're here also, because I'm about to share with you that that is not where you want to start. You don't want to chop things down immediately. The only time that we ever really do this is with our competitors who are, under a certain amount of weeks when they're about to get ready for a show. And we need to slash calories to kind of get aggressive with their fat loss, because everything else they're doing is condensed and has been done. And we're now at that stage, is when we kind of get to this 1,300 calorie range. Now, the body needs time to adjust. So when you slash your calories too low, what happens is you disrupt two very important hormones, which is ghrelin and leptin. And the hunger hormone leptin is one I was talking about earlier, will go absolutely bonkers at some point if you continue to keep calories too low for too long. Now, what happens is when that leptin is affected, it is going to lead you being even more hungrier. And it also decreases your metabolism and slows it down a little bit. And it could potentially lead to weight gain, because if it's increasing your hunger and you're reaching for things that are high calorie or in an excess of what you need, and you start to go above your calorie needs for maintenance or your cut, then you can potentially gain weight. And I've been here before. This has happened to me. If you've listened to the podcast, I talk about it often, about how my leptin was like undetectable, really. And I am honestly just now, and it's about 2 years since my last like really like deep dieting phase. I'm just now at the point where I understand my own hunger cues, because I've wrecked them for so many years. And part of that was this slide, is going too low. And when you do that, the other reason why we say no, 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 don't do that, is because you will lose muscle if you diet too aggressively, too fast. What happens is your body can't keep up, and you think you're losing all this fat, when the reality of it is you're also losing some lean tissue, some lean muscle mass, which we do not want. And we'll talk more about muscle as we get into what to do, but you want to keep as much as you can, because that is going to keep your metabolism even happier the more muscle that you carry. All right, next slide. We've got the third mistake. Okay. Now, I don't hate cardio, because I think I get a little aggressive about it on the podcast. And people think, oh my God, why does she hate cardio so much? Cardio is great for you. That is not what I'm saying here. I love me some cardio. The problem is excessive cardio, too much cardio. And what I hate about cardio is that people think that cardio is the only answer when it's time to lose weight. It's like, I need to be sweaty. I need to go do cardio. I need to go for a run. I had this hairstylist for many, many years, and I love her dearly, and she's amazing. She moved, and I think I went to her for probably 7 years. And every January, I could bank on the fact that when I was going in to get my hair colored around that time, she was going to be proud to tell me that she started running again because she needed to lose some weight. And I would always counsel her on this, essentially what you're learning in this slide today. And it did not matter. She still did it every year. And she still struggled every year. It was the same every year. It wasn't working, right? She'd quit and that would be it. But I share this slide with you with this picture in particular because this is well, she started as my client for a couple years, and she's now a trainer and a nutrition coach on my team. And this is Coach Erica. Now, Coach Erica is going to be 50 this year, I believe. Yes, she's going to be 50 this year. I'm like, I should know that. And when she started with me on the left here in this little blue suit, looks great, tiny. She's a small person, she's not like obese or any of that, looks great. However, she was running 12 miles a week, I want to say, on average. And she was really big into marathons and half marathons and, all of those things. Had never really touched a weight in her life. So she said she'd kind of go in the weight room, didn't really know much, but was just like tinker around. We have a podcast together, which is also super fun, where she goes into all this. But and then when we started working together, I told her very kindly that she had to stop running. And I thought she was going to cry because it was a source of community for her. And she had friends that ran. And I said, okay, let's do this. We're going to negotiate. You can keep 3 miles a week in for a while, but at some point, we're probably going to need to cut that back. And her normal fears came up like, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain all this weight. I'm going to stop running. I'm going to, I'm going to get fat. And this is how I stay lean. And then she would run and they'd go have some big like meal after or something. And what actually happened was she stopped looking like a melted candle, okay? And she started to have shape and tone, and we sculpted. And now you see this tiny little thing. If you see her, she's got the cutest little perky, she calls it her Big Booty Judy. That's what her husband calls her, Big Booty Judy now. But she's got this great little shape, and it was all from ditching the cardio and switching to weight training. Now, she doesn't get away with doing no cardio because she had created such a threshold for her maintenance in terms of how much cardio that her body needed, that we still did cardio, but we just changed the kind, and we made sure it wasn't going to impact her muscle gain and her hormones and things like that. So it is harder to keep muscle on with too much cardio. It is a diminishing returns for fat loss. And what I mean by that is it will get you so far. And then if you want to continue to lose weight, you have to keep adding on a ton. Now, it can be frustrating because you're like, man, I'm already running for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. And that's where we really try to flip the script for you and get you into the mindset of strength training, because as you build muscles and you start to sculpt and tone and adding that tissue onto your body, your body can use more calories. It's much different than using your cardiovascular system. You can actually use your food to actually build your muscle as you're recovering. And so we want to shift that from tons of cardio to resistance training that is just enough for you to change the shape of your body. Now, like I mentioned earlier, too much is going to vary person to person, but the biggest problem and the reason why this is an issue is because it starts to affect your cortisol hormone. So cortisol is a hormone. It often gets a bad rap. It is not bad to have cortisol. It's just bad when your cortisol is too high, right? Your cortisol levels are too high. We also don't want it too low, because that's a thing too for some people. But when you are doing too much excessive cardio for extended durations, it is very stressful on your energy systems, and it starts to increase your cortisol. Now, when that's chronically high, it can definitely lead to increased fat storage. You start to see it in some people in weird areas. A lot of times it's their belly. Sometimes it'll be like their hips and their saddlebags. It all depends really person to person. Genetically, where you tend to store fat is usually where it comes on. So cortisol is basically, just in a nutshell, your body perceives that as a form of stress. And so what it does when it's increased is as a way to protect your body. It doesn't know that it's not a bear chasing you, right? Because we don't deal with that anymore now that we've evolved. Now it's like your boss is yelling at you, right? So, or the stress on your body from your excessive cardio, and that's a stressor to your systems. So it doesn't know that, you're not in the wilderness. It's just going to be like, okay, stress response to the body. What do we need to do? We are going to conserve energy. How do we conserve energy? Store fat. So that's how that all ties in with cortisol. Okay, the fourth thing is skipping meals. I mean, who here has ever thought, well, I'm just going to skip some meals. I need to lose a few pounds. I think, if you're over 40, you've probably dabbled in that at least once or twice, if not more. It's like, oh, I'm just going to skip some meals. The reason why this is bad is because it throws off the other hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin, or some people call it the gremlin, because this also leads to levels of increased feelings of hunger. So what usually happens is you skip meals, or you decide you want to do some kind of fasting protocol, and then you're fighting this hunger, but you're like, nope, I'm going to stop. I'm not eating. And then at some point, the levee breaks, right? You're probably good with that for a certain period of time, but there is a point where you're usually going to fold. Um, you know, binge eating is a typical one, overeating at night, massive snack accidents, just a overall overconsumption in calories. So we always recommend, and there's something to the old adage of several small meals throughout the day. That way your hunger hormones stay stable. Now there are some other hormones that definitely dip and rise with your eating timing, but ghrelin is one that is definitely the gremlin that makes you snacky and in the pantry a lot of times at night. So this can definitely obviously lead to weight gain over time. And then the beef that I have, and a lot of health professionals, and those that are starting to see some studies emerging with fasting, is that it's actually being shown to be more damaging to women's hormones the longer that they do it, and if you're doing extended fasts. Now, I'm of the camp that I think sometimes fasting is okay. you know um, Fasting occasionally, a few times per year. Sometimes, if you wake up and maybe you ate really late the night before, and you went to bed late, and you wake up early, you're not really hungry. So, dragging out your eating window a little bit longer just kind of naturally makes sense to go with your natural hunger cues and hormones. But as a regular practice, I don't think that it is something that women should do continuously for the long haul as a method for fat loss. Um, the only way that I've seen it actually really work when it comes to fat loss is in short periods of time where you're doing it maybe, for a few weeks. And with that, you are also tracking your macros, because there's no magic to intermittent fasting if you aren't in a calorie deficit. So a lot of people think, well, yeah, I'm intermittent fasting. I don't eat until 4 o'clock, and then I just eat whatever I want till I go to bed. You can still gain weight doing that. I've done it. Okay. I've done it unintentionally, and just kind of seeing like, well, I'm fasting and I'm not really tracking calories, but then I'm not losing weight. So it's a combination of needing to actually track your macros and be in that fasted window that works. And like I said, a few weeks, not longer than that, because then once you pass that threshold of a few weeks, you're starting to dip into potentially disrupting your hormones. And you don't want to do that, because then you're ravenous, you eat twice as much as you should, and then you're sort of back at square one, and sometimes even worse off. So meal frequency is different for everybody, but again, a few solid meals throughout the day is usually the way to go. Most of our clients, we find, settle into three to four meals. I would say the average is probably four, where three are bigger main meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then some snack in between. And it really just depends on how long you're awake. Okay, I would love to know in the white box, which of these diets have you tried? If you can, you could let me know in the chat bubble. Keto, paleo, a bro style bodybuilder diet, a detox, a cleanse, a tea. Have you done any of these? I would love to know. For the record, I've done them all, if that makes you feel better. Um, I would love to know. I know we've got dieters in here. I know you've dieted. So if you haven't, if I've missed one, I would love to know. There's so many out there. Um, let's see. iPhone 117 says teas, keto and a cleanse. Yes, most definitely. Hopefully not together, because you would definitely be living on the toilet, Jen. Okay, let's see. All right, so what do we think these have in common, these diets? Any guess? And, let's see. Tori says the worst was the HCG. Yeah, the HCG is another one that that is, to me, is kind of silly, because when you go on HCG, you can only eat like 500 calories a day or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a minute since anyone's come to us with an HCG background diet, but anybody who eats 500 calories is going to lose weight. Okay. So no magic to HCG. So Jen says they're unsustainable. Tori says food type restriction. Yes. So both of those are correct. And also most of these, and a lot of times most diets completely eliminate food groups, right? So keto is like carbs are the devil, paleo kind of along the same lines, and then also, some other foods in there that you aren't allowed to eat. Bro style bodybuilder diets, again, very meal plan, very regimented, like you got to eat what's on this paper or you're failing. Detoxes, a lot of times we have somebody right now who is doing a detox, and I'm like, okay, how's it going? It's like omit all these things, same things like cleanses, teas. Teas are usually like drink this and like you're gonna poop your brains out, right? Or they claim to like have some metabolic boosting properties, like, green tea or some other like herbal type ingredients that stimulate fat burning. Now, with these diets, there's always some component of like you're losing some water when it comes to anything that eliminates carbs. Okay. So when you're doing like keto and a lot of times paleo, and sometimes the bro style bodybuilder diets, you're eliminating carbs. Like carbs are the devil. So then we get this narrative in our head, like, oh, I can't eat carbs. Carbs are going to make me fat. Carbs just hold water. Too much carbs will indeed make you fat. However, a lot of people just think that's just what we need to do, is we just need to cut it all, right? We get women all the time that come to us that are like, I cannot have more than 100 grams of carbs a day. I just know it. I get fat. I'm going to gain weight. And then we start doing some deeper dives into what that actually means. And a lot of times they've seen the scale move really quickly when they drop their carbs. And so they associate that with success. So they want to just go default to that, right? But what they're also not realizing is that because of those really big slashes to that particular food group, it's also the reason why they can't sustain it, right? Because carbs are delicious. For most people, enjoy them. And while we don't need a ton of them, there is some validity to the fact that we want them for lifestyle enjoyment. We're all human, those types of things. So I never demonize any food group. I'm an advocate of like, let's just eat how we're supposed to eat, which is mainly things that grow from the ground, whole foods, single ingredient items, things that your grandparents could pronounce if they had to read a label, right? Things like that, as much as possible. And then leave room for life and these other things that we enjoy. That is really like our premise, while also being able to achieve your fitness goals. Now, it's not going to be as fast as keto, paleo, bro, but it's going to be sustainable. You'll be able to do it forever for the most part, right? Like as long as you don't have any health conditions that say you can't have certain foods or things. And also, your body will look much better in the long run if you take the tortoise route and not the hare. Okay. So like if you remember the tale of like the tortoise and the hare, it's really what it comes down to with dieting. So my biggest goal and my biggest mission in life, like even if no one ever works with me, but if they listen or find any of my content, is that you please stop doing these things for the sake of fat loss. If you truly enjoy eating like this and it supports, your body goals and you enjoy it, doesn't feel strict or restricting, then by all means. But if not, like don't do this just because you want, the silver bullet. I always use this photo in this particular conversation because this is a client, Makayla, that actually this is before she had her baby. She had her baby and she's been back now. But Makayla, I love her dearly, and she'll be the first to admit to you that she would come to us after every keto diet that she would do. And I always remember it because she would call it keto. She'd be like, I did keto and I lost like 40 pounds, but I gained it all back. And so I'm going to try that. And so she would do that. She did that a couple times. And then finally she's like, okay, I'm not doing keto anymore. I'm like, thank you, Makayla. But to that point is, it eliminates a food group. She had these crazy results really fast. So she just wanted to do that. And then we're like, okay, that's not sustainable because you keep gaining it back. And that is the most miserable feeling. So the key is keeping those hormones happy as you move through your fat loss journey. So you're not, and you're not eliminating food groups in the process. And that is creating as much balance as you can and taking your time through the process. That is going to promote more balanced and optimized hormones in the long run versus just these strict diets that are just, crashes and kind of getting you this like silver bullet. Okay. Next, we're going to dive into some more meat and potato goodies. Speaking of single ingredient items, meats and potatoes is a good meal. Okay, so you must understand these things before we blame hormones. Now, I felt like I needed to put this slide in here because what we see happen oftentimes when we start working with somebody, let's say we work with them on nutrition, okay, because we have a program, it's called Ditch Deprivation. It's just the nutrition piece of it. It's not your workouts, your training. It's not this, the big elaborate signature program like the Goddess Body Project, but it is working with a coach for 12 weeks, one-on-one. We start working on your diet. We start doing all the things. Some things that we start to see with this is that girls will be like, I'm going to go get my hormones checked because, I feel like something's off. And they're also not adhering to a structured like diet and training plan, right? They sign up and they're like, I'm just going to go fix my hormones. And they go fix their hormones and then they aren't doing anything else, right? They just go get their hormones checked. The doctor gets them on whatever they need to. They don't want to do the lifestyle things. It's too much work, right? The diet thing is just too much work, eating healthy. I'm just going to get my hormones checked. Then what happens is they start taking hormones and they get upset because they think, well, I'm spending all this money on getting my hormones in line and it's still not working. Getting my hormones checked and fixed didn't work. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter if you get your hormones in alignment, if your diet and your exercise and your sleep and your stress are not consistently on track, then it does not matter how great your hormone doctor has your meds prescribed. You're still going to struggle with fat, your body fat accumulation, changing your body shape, all of the things. So as a foundation, before we get into like what needs to be the pillar of your healthy hotness, hormone strategy, it's what is your diet like? Are you tracking your food? And if you're not tracking your food, have you ever tracked your food? Now, I don't track my food. I want to get everybody off of tracking their food. However, you can't get here without knowing all the things, right? Without knowing how much food your body actually needs to maintain what it's at, without knowing how much food your body needs to actually say, hey, we can lose some body fat now, right? Without how much, food you need to like build muscle or be kind of like in a maintenance phase. So you can get away with not tracking once you have learned what portion sizes look like, you know what lean proteins are, you understand what, single ingredient carbohydrate foods are. Once you get an awareness for that and portion sizes, and you can kind of look at a plate and go, yeah, that's probably like 4 ounces of chicken, half a cup of rice, and veggies. We don't really like veggies, are free for the most part. I mean, they're not, but they are, like that's not the worst of your problems. It's like figuring out how much fat something has. When you can start to do that, then you get into a spot where you can maintain, and you don't have to diet, and you don't have to worry about being in an app and tracking every morsel. You just know, right? Like I know at any given moment, if I wanted to lose 10 pounds, exactly what I would need to do, because I have the knowledge and the experience of tracking and doing all the things. But if you've never done that, then it might not be your hormones, right? It might just be you need to get your body fat in line. And with that, your hormones will naturally start to improve. And the same thing goes for exercise, right? Consistent exercise is going to support your hormones. It's going to support stress relief. And then you have the two that are like the silent the silent killers, I want to say, is your stress levels and your sleep. If you're sleep deprived and you're in under a lot of stress, those things also, with some work and some self-care and some things in place, with all three of these linked in together, and your hormones, you are like supercharged for results. So getting into the nitty gritty, the real reason why you're here, now you know all the things, is optimizing and starting today. So just a fun little reminder, I always love to give you some real talk, is nothing is going to change if nothing changes. So if anything, after today, take some action. Okay. I'm going to go through these slides, but I want you to think about, what is it that I could be improving on, just getting 1% better at, that would be the domino that helps tip more dominoes for me to have an easier fat loss lifestyle, or a lean lifestyle, right? Where my hormones are happy. Okay. The first one, I don't know. I mean, you can screenshot this if you want. This is not an exhaustive list. There's a ton, there's only so much time I have today to give you, kind of like the nuggets. We go over this in exhaustion in the actual program, but with this, it's really prioritizing a diet that's rich in whole foods. And a lot of times that's like speaking a foreign language to people, right? I think about when I'm having conversations about like nutrition and things like that. It's like, what is the path of least friction or resistance that you could change today that with time would yield great results? So things, swapping things out that you already consume for something that's a little bit better, that you can, you know, have a willingness to accept, right? And what I mean by that is, Cheetos are not going to be the same as carrot sticks. Okay. I don't care who the hell you are. If some health guru is like, just eat carrot sticks, like, no, bitch, I have a Cheeto craving. Okay. Okay. So I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, in your day to day living, in the things that you use that maybe you don't have a particular super attachment to when it comes to like flavor. Like, for example, some of my clients are like, if you take away my coffee creamer, I'm going to cut you. And I'm like, noted. We'll keep your coffee creamer in, instead of, you know, maybe they have like some kind of really sugary granola bar for a snack. I'm thinking like Oats Valley or Nature's or whatever, one of those. I'm like, okay, since you're not willing to give up your coffee creamer because you're going to cut me, how about we swap out something else that you're having, like your granola bar? How about we swap that out for a protein bar? Sure, the calories are the same, but the protein bar is going to be higher in protein. So you're going to hit some of your protein goals. It's going to be more satiating, right? Because like, I always get frustrated when people are like, protein bars are glorified candy bars. While yes, some of them are, the whole point of the protein bar is it's kind of a small meal, kind of gets you in between other meals, or some people use it as a treat, and it has protein in it, which is way better than a candy bar, is way better than a granola bar, because the granola bar is just going to be a big, gigantic spike of sugar without protein to help balance out that insulin spike. So with a protein bar, at least you get a little bit of that, right? So you see, there's like I call them sanity foods, or we call them like, nutritional meal finisher, or not nutritional meal finishers, just ways that you can still have your fun things that you're like, I don't want to imagine my life without my hazelnut creamer. Okay, great. I don't want you to have a life where you can't enjoy that in the morning, right? So just some little yes, half and half, right? So I just saw a comment in there. Audrey says, yes, to the half and half. So again, same thing. But you can do these swap outs and they will save you hundreds of calories a day. And with time, will mean you're putting on less body fat, and which will mean your hormones are happier when you're not carrying excess body fat. So even if you did nothing else, you would be shocked at how much of a difference those would make. Okay. The next one is exercise, which I think y'all know that's what my love language is exercise. So doing enough exercise, and kind of what I link up as like the trifecta that support your hormone regulation. Okay. We got to find the Goldilocks spot. So the Goldilocks spot, after doing this for almost 20 years with women across all spans of life, we have a woman right now in our studio who's, I think Jen is 71 or 72. So she's probably like our oldest client at this point right now. We have had a lady in her 80s, but she came in with, I think, her daughter or something, but she came once. But Jen is a regular. She's 72. She deadlifts probably like 200 pounds, working with us now for, I think, almost a year. But strength training 3 days a week is generally where we see a great average for transfer over to losing body fat, and having more of a lean look and more of a curvy, muscular, fit, athletic look with your diet in tandem. Okay. This is our client Tara. She actually is the goddess of the month this month. She's working with Coach Erica, which funny enough was the one a few slides back with the runner. She's been working with Erica, and she's down a little over 20 pounds. She's just wrapping up a goddess body project. She's going to do another one. But to that point, Tara, we're like, let's just start with 3 days a week, right? This is kind of where we want to get our women, is that strength training as a base. And cardio, because I don't hate cardio. All right, let's just put it out there. Let's not burn me at the stake. I love cardio. My favorite form is walking. Okay. Boring. It's not sexy. It's not P90X. It's not the boot camp down the street. It's not a spin class. Those things are all great. I think they all serve their purpose. But if you just want to do some basic fat loss and be able to do this sustainably and not deal with a ton of injuries and stay lean, walking is where it's at. I get on a cardio machine very rarely now. Sometimes I'm like in the mood. I know, weird, but I'll get on the stair mill. But walking, few days of movement that you enjoy is also an option, right? It could be Zumba, it could be boxing, something. Flexibility. So we got yoga, mobility, stretching, keeping your joints and everything kind of lubed up and mobile, super important. And I know that it probably maybe is an oxymoron, but it's probably a no-brainer that strength training is going to help your adrenals, your thyroid, and your ovaries. And we're going to talk about that in the coming slides. But a balance of these is great for hormones. It's not too much of any one given thing. Now, just to continue on this with my previous slide, is why strength training. And this is another one that I'm like, I'm going to scream this from my soapbox probably until I roll over into the casket that women need to strength train. Okay. This does not mean you have to be a bodybuilder. This does not mean you have to be a CrossFitter. This does not mean you have to be like yoked out of your brain with any kind of muscle definition at all. Be just very bare bones. You know, my stepmom is 66, 65. She's basically like my mom. She's been going through some hard things. We've been getting her in the gym and she's lifting weights and she is like a new woman. She has so much energy. She feels stronger. She's moving around. She's doing all these things. It's so great for you as you age. And she didn't start until this year. Okay. So muscle mass preservation, super important as we age, because as we get older, we see a natural decline in our muscle tissue. It's called sarcopenia. And with strength training, it's going to help you preserve that. Okay. It's also very important for maintaining your metabolic health and your hormonal balance. Then, as you increase your lean muscle tissue, it is going to boost your metabolism because, like I mentioned earlier, muscle is very metabolically active. It just means that it burns more calories when you are at rest. So, me just sitting here chilling, having more lean muscle mass on my body than, let's say, if I was the same weight but had way less muscle tissue, I'm just going to burn more calories by the nature of having more expensive tissue on my body. Muscle tissue is expensive. It costs calories, your calories, to keep it going. So that can obviously support your weight loss goals. Then we have the hormonal response that weight training helps out with, which what I was mentioning with like your ovaries, your insulin. It helps stimulate the release of those hormones. Now, as women, we have testosterone, and when we weight train, it helps naturally boost that. It also helps boost your growth factors, so your IGF-1, and those are super important in the role of metabolism and muscle preservation. So then we move down to bone health, which again, not a sexy topic, but very important as we age because we are at increased risk for osteoporosis as we age. And while that might not be something we're thinking about when we're 29 or 35, and sometimes, you know, like when I was 40, I wasn't even really thinking about that. But now that I'm 46 and, you know, I'm doing things and I'm like, man, if I fell, that I would be screwed. Like if I did not weight train and I did not have like the strength and the density that I do have in my muscles, and I fell just doing something like coming down the stairs, you know, texting absent-mindedly, and I can like completely like destroy my body if I wasn't strong, you know, as we age. These are things that you start to think about. You know, I didn't think about this stuff 5 years ago, but I am now for sure. And then, you know, weight training, exercise in general, but there's just something about getting in the gym when you have a high stress job, a high stress life. You're sad, you're mad, you're depressed, you're happy, any of it. Because when you can move through a weight training session that is challenging or you challenge your body against resistance, it's like a metaphor to me about being able to move up against resistance in life. And that's why I feel like weight training has been such an instrumental piece of like not only my physical appearance, but like my mental health. Hands down. Like my mental health is saved because I weight train, right? Like I've tried every other form of exercise known to man. And it just settles on knowing that I can do hard things. And if boys can do it, I can do it too. So that is my love of weights. Okay. Now the third thing, and I have a fun little domino effect for you because you can quickly see when I'm going to explain this to you how these are all very interlinked and how it can create this like continual spiral that gets you stuck and honestly frustrated. So you're lacking sleep, you're high in stress, right? And a lot of times those are correlated. Stress is high, you don't sleep very well because you're ruminating and thinking about all the things. Then, or you stay up late, right? Like, where are my night owls? Do I have any night owls in this crew? Anybody stay up past, let me see. What do I classify as a night owl these days? You stay up past 11, you're a night owl in my book. So if you're sleeping, the less you're sleeping, then you're definitely setting yourself up for an environment to have some disruption in your hormones. So when you are high stress, low sleep, it is going to affect your insulin. It's going to affect that cortisol that we talked about earlier, and also some of your metabolic functions. Now, what happens when that happens, right? You didn't sleep. So, guess what? Unless you got to sleep in, you are generally waking up with low energy. Then you've got this low energy going on. What typically happens? You make irrational food choices because you're hangry. Your schedule's thrown off, and also your insulin is a little thrown off because of the lack of sleep. And because as humans, our bodies know food is fuel for creating energy. We will oftentimes grab for something, or we'll eat more of things that we, are probably trying to soothe some stress with as well. There's a little bit of an emotional component that sometimes happens. And then the other kind of no-brainer is that when you have these nights where you're restlessly sleeping, or you're getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, you're up for more hours the next day unless you can sleep in. So now you've extended the next day a lot more hours, which means you got to eat over a longer period of time. And then that also leads into spiking your cravings, and then you want comfort foods, and you eat your feelings, right? And so it just kind of repeats itself if we let it, and we got to kind of stop it dead in its tracks with some of these tools, with like creating a bedtime routine, super important, like you do with your children if you have kids or grandkids, or nieces, nephews, those kinds of things. And if we didn't give these little humans some kind of structure, it would be mass chaos the next day. And I always tell my clients, like, we're just big kids. We're just bigger kid versions. And so we don't get a hall pass because all of a sudden we turned 18 and like we can stay up late. Our body doesn't know the difference. So we still need rest and recovery and ways to take care of ourselves that help us down regulate so we can get sound sleep. So along with a bedtime routine, some suggestions that I like to give my clients is eliminating any caffeine. I don't do caffeine after noon, after 12. Oh, thank you, Tori. I eliminate caffeine after 12 o'clock because I know that caffeine has a reuptake level, and it usually has about a 6 hour shelf life in your body, which a lot of people don't know. Some people can push it off longer. I have a really great friend who can have a latte right before bed and pass out. However, I would definitely stand to think that she probably is not slipping into a deep REM restorative type sleep that we do need to actually repair and reset our entire system, right? It's like when you shut the laptop down at night, it's like power down, turn it off. And if we're not getting into that deep REM sleep, then we're definitely not optimizing our hormones. So that's one, is eliminating caffeine afternoon. You guys, right now, I am in a caffeine detox and it is not fun. So I had like a little matcha shot before I got on this call. So I'm like feeling it. It's my magic mind. I'm like, bzz. I'm like, okay, that was just enough because I haven't had like true caffeine for a few days. Okay. The other thing is I try to get girls to not think that eating before bed is going to make you gain weight. It's just excess of calories that makes you gain weight. So with the component as far as affecting your hormones, give yourself some time to digest after you eat. So try to give yourself like an hour, digest your food. So that way your body isn't trying to digest while you're sleeping and keep you up and diverting energy to that, and maybe waking up with, some kind of unsettled stomach or anything that might come up with like heartburn, things like that, that is going to interfere sleep and then ultimately interferes hormones, right? See the domino effect. So getting to bed at a decent time, dropping back that caffeine earlier, try not to eat an hour before bed, read a book, try to read something that is, not going to get you hyperstimulated before bed and where you're going to be dreaming about stuff that could possibly keep you up. Get off your electronics if you can, an hour before bed, and have what I call a non-negotiable bedtime. right? Like a non-negotiable bedtime. And for me, that hard and fast non-negotiable bedtime right now is 10:30. Like I am lights out by 10:30. There's exceptions to that rule because it's not a dictatorship, okay? But 10:30, I want to be like snug in my bed and being like chilled out and ready for sleepy time, okay? Um and then the other thing that I like to include is some other kind of maybe some self-care thing that maybe needs to get you into more of a relaxed state. My favorite go-to is, I point here because my bathroom is right here, but um is a bath. And I just started getting obsessed with fun bath things. I'm like, if I can make bath things fun, like a 4-year-old, I will want to do it. So what is fun for me? It is my iPad. It is, I get a fancy glass with some seltzer water and I throw some berries in it. It is a bath bomb. It is, it's a whole situation. I wish I could take you guys in there, but it would dismantle my whole product, my whole situation here. I had candles on last night. I have one of those like oil diffusers in there that has like the relaxing scent. So I am like chill zone, right? Shut the door. It is me time. So find yourself some kind of wind down routine. Maybe that's spicy time with your partner. Maybe that's spicy time with yourself, whatever it needs to be, get her done. Okay. All right. So to recap, we had your nutrition, which needs to be something we take care of anyways when we're trying to be healthy and hot. Your fitness, your exercise, strength training, and then your sleep and your stress. So my question and last question for you, because I have now rambled on, is for the few of you that are left, what is the one thing that you could change as easy as today that you know would make the biggest impact? Doesn't mean you will, but you know, at least you know. And when you're ready, that's going to be the thing you do, right? I would love to know in the chat box what that is for you. Let's see. Let's see. Sleep, amount, and quality. Yes, definitely, Audrey. Tori says have a non-negotiable bedtime. Yeah. And that's like the easiest, right? You're like, oh, that's easy, but it's like you still, like I will tell you, there are some nights when I'm like, I'm really just like my boyfriend gets home late, we go sit in the hot tub some nights. And then by the time we go to the gym, we come home, we eat, we'll go to the hot tub. By the time we're like done with that, he's off at 6, it's like 10 o'clock. And I'm like, ugh, it's like, just feels like not enough time. So it's really just finding, even 10-15 minutes that you can tack on that you'll notice makes a huge difference. If you have an iPhone, there is this little like feature in the clock that allows you to like set your bedtime, and it'll send you a wind down reminder and like all those things. You can set it up. It's quite lovely. You can actually set your alarm, and I usually go off of that every time I crawl into bed because I want to hit a non-negotiable of 6 hours, if as a minimum. If I get 8, we are living our best life if I'm hitting 8 hours. Let me just tell you that. Eating after dinner when I'm really just sleepy. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, and then we are actually enrolling for the next round of the Goddess Body Project. So starts April 15th. We cover all this, right? This is just a fraction of essentially what you're working on, and I know that sounds probably overwhelming, but it's one of those things where you're going through the process and you're looking at, okay, what do I need to work on? What is the thing that is going to be the biggest style mover? Most of the time that's nutrition. So we spend a ton of time talking about these types of things like diet, different topics about diet, kind of how to make this the most easy transition into just making it a lifestyle. And that's really what the program is about. It's definitely for somebody who is like, okay, I'm ready to kind of like take it to the next level and be accountable to a coach. In the studio for sure, we are going in and working with the trainers. You'll see your coach likely in there as well, and just having that source of like, tell me what to do. I always tell people, one of my girlfriends is like, um, you have a coach for everything. I'm like, yeah, because I need an adultier adult who has done all of the things to tell me what to do. And then when they tell me what to do, I look at it and I'm like, okay, I decide what actions I need to take that are going to make the biggest impact for what it is I'm trying to work on, right? My business, my body, my mindset. I went to a dermatologist for a skincare routine. I'm like, just tell me. I'm watching every TikTok known to man, and like, I don't know. It's like a buffet. You look at my counter and there's 85 different products. And they're like, okay, your skin is this way, that way, you're this age, it's this texture, boom, 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 boom. Great. Throw money at it, and I don't have to waste money on other shit ever again, right? So that's essentially what the Goddess Body Project is. I always have a little slide with info on it too, but and also because I just love bragging about our clients, and this is Kelly. She's actually competing. I think she's done 3 rounds of the Goddess Body Project, had no intentions of competing, but she was like, this is great. Like, it's a lifestyle. She got to probably about 80% of where she needed to be before she transitioned it into a contest prep situation. But yeah, but we're excited. So she's competing, and the gal on the next slide is as well. But as far as the studio goes, we do have an online, and we do have the VIP online as well. The online group and the online VIP, we're going to be launching here right after the glute challenge, which is starting next week. But we're enrolling right now for in person. It's essentially the same thing. Online is just going to be one is going to be more DIY, where you take everything and implement it yourself. We do a weekly live office hours on Mondays, and you can pop in and we go over like whatever the topic is for the week, like this. But yeah, so that is available to the girls in the group program as well. And then the VIP, you actually will still work one-on-one with a coach. It's just for girls who are out of town, who want all of the things, and they're going to go implement the workouts on their own. And then the in-person, they actually come and train with us, which is great. So much fun. Just like, it's such a good vibe. If anybody's been to Venus, it's like chill. It's like, no, not intimidating. Everybody's rooting for everybody. We just like want to see everybody win, and it's not cliquey. And um, anyways, I love it. I'm biased. I own it. It's a great place, and we have some amazing humans that are changing lives over there. So, but oh, I didn't even go over this. I'm blabbing here. If you hate the gym, and you haven't been seeing results with like big group classes, this is usually what this program's good for. I usually say, like, girls who have done like a lot of boot camps, who have done a lot of like group fitness, and they're like, they like to work out, they just don't know how to do the weight training. This is really like where it's at, right? Because this is going to take you to that next level. And then this is Vanessa on the right. She's actually competing too as well. I think she's doing July, which is super fun. She's down over 50 pounds. I think on our podcast, I think she was at 50 pounds then. And I'll plug in the little link there if you guys want to check it out. But she's doing great. I'm really excited to see her on stage as well. But these are all the goodies for the Goddess Body Project. But it's custom tailored. You'll come in, you train at the studio, you train with up to 3 other women. So it's semi-private. So it's not as expensive as one-on-one personal training, which is great. And they'll take you through full hour workouts. You don't have to do anything except show up. They tell you exactly what you're working for the day, your body parts, sets, reps. I mean, down to rest. I mean, they direct traffic and make sure you're doing everything great, which is wonderful. And then also too, we last year changed it because we were doing just macros. And that was really overwhelming for some people. And it was actually like a barrier because there is a learning curve with that, and I hate learning new software, so I totally get it. So we can do meal plans as well. We have some meal plans already designed, and then your coach can also design meal plans for you as well if you do VIP or in person. And that's also great. We just try to get you off meal plans because we want you to be independent when you go anywhere, right? Like I could walk into any restaurant at any given time. It could be Chinese food, Indian food, Greek food, and have a menu and look at it and say, like, okay, never eaten here before, but I know I need a protein. So let me find that first. And let me find a carb and let me find, what method is going to have the least amount of fat. So that is our end goal, is that you end up doing that. So you don't have to keep doing a bunch of random diets. You just know protein, carbs, and fat. Okay, I just got to figure that out, right? It's like Weight Watchers, but like the cool version.